The dusty vintage shop sat quietly on the outskirts of a small town, its shelves cluttered with forgotten treasures and random curiosities. Jay Park, the owner, had seen his fair share of strange items, but nothing could prepare him for what was about to change his life forever. The space container looked unremarkable, a rusted metal box with faded markings and strange symbols etched along its sides. When the auction house had listed it, no one had shown much interest. But Jay saw something different. Something about the container whispered of secrets waiting to be discovered. He paid $1 single for it, more out of curiosity than any real expectation. The container was heavy, definitely not empty, but sealed tight with a complex locking mechanism that seemed more advanced than any technology he'd ever seen. Back in his shop, Jay carefully examined the container. His fingers traced the intricate patterns, feeling a slight warmth beneath the metal surface. He noticed a small indentation, almost like a fingerprint scanner, but not quite. When his hand accidentally brushed against it, something inside hummed to life. A soft blue light began to pulse from within the container. Jay took a step back, his heart racing. The metal seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like a living thing. Then, with a hiss of pressurized air, the first seal broke open. One by one, crystalline pods began to emerge. They were unlike anything Jay had ever seen, smooth, almost transparent, with a soft inner glow that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Each pod was perfectly shaped, holding what looked like a sleeping figure. The first pod fully activated, its surface becoming completely clear. Inside lay a woman unlike any human Jay had ever seen. Her skin had a slight blue-silver shimmer, her features both familiar and completely alien. She was breathtakingly beautiful, yet something about her suggested she was far more than just a pretty face. Jay watched in stunned silence as more pods began to activate. 3, then 5, then 7. Each contained a similar being, all female, all seemingly in a deep sleep that had lasted far longer than any human could survive. The room temperature dropped. The air became charged with an energy that made the hair on Jay's arms stand up. One of the pods began to move, its occupant slowly stirring. Her eyes opened, not human eyes, but large, slightly iridescent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She looked directly at Jay, and in that moment he knew his life would never be the same. The woman, if she could be called that, began to sit up. Her movements were fluid, almost too perfect. She wore something that looked like a form-fitting suit made of material that seemed to change colors as she moved. More pods were opening now. The beings inside were waking up, looking around with a mixture of confusion and controlled panic. They spoke to each other in a language that sounded like music, complex, melodic, impossible for human ears to fully comprehend. Jay stood frozen. $1. He had spent just $1, and now his small shop was filled with what could only be described as sleeping alien beauties who were now very much awake and very much aware of their surroundings. The first woman, seemingly the leader, turned, her full attention to Jay. Her gaze was intense, calculating. She studied him as if he were some strange specimen, completely unaware that he was doing exactly the same to her. "Where are we?" she finally spoke, her words perfectly formed in English, though something about the pronunciation suggested it wasn't her native language. Jay swallowed hard. How does one explain to potentially advanced beings from another world that they've just been discovered in a small-town vintage shop, pulled from a container bought for $1? "Earth," he managed to say. "You're on Earth." The woman's eyes narrowed. Something told Jay that this was going to be the most interesting day of his entire life, and it all started with $1 single. The alien beings moved with an unnatural grace, their bodies seemingly weightless as they examined the small vintage shop. The lead female, who Jay would later learn was named Yuna, approached him with calculated steps. Her companions spread out, touching objects with curious fingers, their eyes scanning every corner of the room. "How long have we been asleep?" Yuna asked, her voice a melodic blend of sounds that seemed to float between human speech and something entirely different. Jay fumbled with an old radio, trying to appear calm. "I'm not entirely sure," he responded, his hands shaking slightly. "Months, years, decades." The aliens exchanged quick glances. Their communication seemed to happen through subtle eye movements and barely perceptible hand gestures. Jay realized they were discussing something without speaking a word. Una stepped closer. Her skin had a slight silvery sheen that changed colors when she moved, like oil on water. "Our last memory," she said carefully, "was of a critical mission. Something went wrong, very wrong." Another alien, named Sue, picked up an old smartphone from the shop's display. She turned it over in her hands, her fingers moving with impossible speed, unlocking the device in seconds. Her eyes widened as she absorbed information from the screen. "We've been asleep for nearly 73 Earth years," Sue announced, her voice a mix of shock and calculation. The shop suddenly felt smaller. Jay could feel the weight of their collective gaze. 7 alien beings, perfectly preserved, now fully awake in his tiny vintage store. "Your civilization," Una asked. "What is its current state?" Jay didn't know how to explain the complexity of human existence. How could he describe world wars, technological revolutions, climate changes, and social transformations in a few simple words? "We've changed," he said simply. "A lot." Sue continued exploring the shop's contents: old radios, vintage cameras, forgotten technological relics. Each item became a piece of a complex puzzle she was trying to solve. Her fingers moved quickly, analyzing, understanding. Una approached a small mirror hanging on the wall. She touched her reflection, examining herself carefully. Her suit, which seemed more like a second skin, shifted colors slightly, adapting to the room's lighting. "We need information," she declared. "Complete and comprehensive." Jay's translation. Device, which he had quickly activated when they first woke up, worked overtime. It captured not just their words, but the subtle nuances of their language, the pauses, the slight tonal shifts that suggested deeper meanings. One of the younger aliens, named Min, discovered an old computer. Within moments, she had accessed its systems, downloading what seemed like entire libraries of information. Her eyes moved faster than any human could track, consuming data at an impossible rate. "Fascinating," Min muttered. "Primitive, but fascinating." Jay watched, both terrified and amazed. These weren't just visitors. They were something more. Survivors, explorers, potentially the most significant discovery in human history. Una turned back to Jay. "You found us," she said. It wasn't a question. $1. A single unit of your planetary currency. He nodded, unsure what else to do. The aliens continued their exploration, moving with a synchronized grace that suggested they had trained together for years. They spoke in their musical language, occasional English words breaking through. Interesting, unexpected, and potential. Outside the shop's window, the world continued as normal. Cars passed, people walked. No one knew that inside this small vintage store, 7 alien beings were taking their first steps on a planet that had changed dramatically during their long sleep. Jay realized he was holding his breath. $1, just $1, had brought these extraordinary beings into his world, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first encounter had begun, quietly, unexpectedly, with a simple touch in a dusty vintage shop that held more secrets than anyone could have imagined. The government facility looked like any other bland government building: grey walls, minimal windows, strict security. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. Jay found himself surrounded by scientists, military personnel, and the 7 alien survivors. Una stood at the center of the briefing room, her fingers dancing across a holographic display. Images of her destroyed civilization flickered, massive cities reduced to dust, star systems gone dark, entire planetary networks collapsed. "Our mission was simple," she explained. "Explore, collect data, return home." Her voice carried a hint of sadness. "But home no longer exists." Dr. Kim, the lead human researcher, listened carefully. Her notepad was filled with complex diagrams and half-written theories. The aliens fascinated her: their biology, their technology, their survival instincts. Min, the youngest alien, had already learned more about human technology in 3 days than most humans learn in a lifetime. She connected their alien communication devices to Earth's internet, creating translation systems that worked faster than any human software. "Your species adapts," Sue observed, watching a group of engineers struggle to understand alien technology. Inefficient, but persistent. The military representatives were less impressed. They saw potential threats, not opportunities. Colonel Park, no relation to Jay, watched the aliens with suspicious eyes. His hand never strayed far from his weapon. Jay noticed how the aliens moved. They didn't walk like humans. Each step was calculated, each movement precise. When they sat, they didn't relax. They positioned themselves strategically, always aware of their surroundings. Food became an interesting challenge. The aliens didn't eat like humans. They absorbed nutrients through a complex process that looked more like photosynthesis than eating. Small patches on their suits would glow softly after they consumed something, converting energy in ways human scientists couldn't understand. "We need a plan," Una announced during one meeting. "Our civilization is gone. We cannot return. We must survive." The humans exchanged nervous glances. Surviving meant integration, adaptation, something that seemed impossible just days ago. Minnie discovered human entertainment quickly. She became fascinated by music, watching YouTube videos for hours. Her favorite seemed to be old rock and roll documentaries. She found human creativity chaotic but interesting. Sue focused on scientific databases. She started solving problems humans had struggled with for decades: climate change models, medical research, quantum computing challenges. Her brain processed information at speeds that made supercomputers look slow. The government debated their status. Were they refugees, potential weapons, scientific discoveries? No one could agree. Jay watched everything unfold, still unable to believe that his $1 purchase had changed everything. The aliens treated him differently, not as a captor or a researcher, but as the person who had accidentally saved them. Strange adaptations began happening. The aliens learned to mimic human expressions. They studied clothing, social interactions, cultural nuances. They weren't trying to become human. They were trying to understand humans. "Your species is complicated," Una told Jay one evening. "You fight, you create, you destroy, you rebuild, always moving, always changing." Colonel Park continued to worry. Military reports suggested the aliens could be a potential threat. Their technology was centuries ahead of human capabilities. One wrong move could mean disaster, but the aliens showed no aggressive intentions. They seemed more curious than anything else. They wanted to learn, to understand, to survive. Days turned into weeks. The facility became a strange mixture of scientific, research center and cultural exchange program. Humans and aliens worked side by side, learning from each other. Jay realized something important. Survival wasn't just about technology or strength. It was about adaptation, understanding, cooperation. $1 had brought 7 alien survivors to Earth, and now they were going to change everything. The dance of survival had begun. Slow, careful, unpredictable. The research center buzzed, with an energy unlike anything seen before. Humans and aliens worked together, their differences becoming strengths instead of barriers. Min, the youngest alien, had become the primary bridge between two completely different worlds. Universities around the globe competed for even a moment of alien knowledge. MIT, Harvard, Tokyo University, they all wanted a piece of the extraordinary. Technological breakthrough. The aliens were selective, choosing partners who showed genuine curiosity and open minds. Jay watched as Sue demonstrated a medical technology that could regenerate human tissue in minutes. A scientist who had lost most of his hand in a laboratory accident watched in disbelief as new skin, muscle, and nerve connections formed before his eyes. "Impossible," the scientist whispered. Sue simply raised an eyebrow. "Nothing is impossible." Wholly unexplored, the quantum computing breakthrough came next. Min developed a system that could process information thousands of times faster than Earth's most advanced supercomputers. Government research centers worked around the clock to understand even a fraction of the technology. Energy production became their next focus. Yuna showed how her civilization had developed clean energy systems that could power entire continents with minimal environmental impact. Climate scientists watched in amazement as she demonstrated technologies that could reverse decades of environmental damage. "Your planet is resilient," Yuna explained to a group of environmental researchers, "but you treat it like a temporary home. It should be a living system." The military remained cautious. Colonel Park continued to view the aliens with suspicion, constantly monitoring their interactions, but even he couldn't deny the potential benefits of their technology. Schools began adapting alien learning techniques. Children learned complex mathematical concepts in days that would have taken years using traditional methods. Educational systems were completely reimagined. Communication technology took a massive leap forward. The aliens helped develop translation, systems that could understand and interpret any language, spoken or written, in real time. Linguistic barriers began to crumble. Jay found himself becoming an unexpected diplomat. His connection with the aliens made him uniquely positioned to help humans understand their visitors. He translated not just words but cultural nuances, helping both sides understand each other. Medical breakthroughs happened weekly. The aliens showed how human biology could be enhanced, not changed, but improved. Genetic treatments that could prevent diseases, repair damaged organs, and extend human life expectancy became possible. "We do not want to replace," Sue would often say. "We want to help you grow." Universities created entire new departments dedicated to alien studies. Researchers worked day and night, trying to understand the technology and knowledge the aliens were sharing. Each breakthrough felt like solving a complex puzzle. Space exploration took a dramatic turn. The aliens shared navigation technologies that made human space missions look like child's play. Concepts of interstellar travel that were once pure. Science fiction became potential reality. Min developed an educational program that could teach complex skills in a fraction of the time humans traditionally required. A person could learn a new language in days, master complex scientific concepts in weeks. The world watched in amazement. News channels covered every breakthrough, every shared technology. The aliens became global celebrities, yet they remained focused on their primary goal, survival and knowledge exchange. "We are survivors," Yuna explained during a global broadcast. "Our civilization is gone, but knowledge never dies." Governments struggled to manage the rapid changes. Economic systems were challenged. Traditional power structures began to shift. The aliens weren't conquering, they were sharing. Jay often thought back to that moment in his small vintage shop. $1. A single dollar had brought these extraordinary beings into human civilization. The knowledge exchange was more than just technology transfer. It was a cultural revolution. Humans were learning to see the universe differently, to understand that they were part of something much larger than their small planet. As weeks turned into months, the world transformed. Slowly, carefully, unexpectedly, and it all started with 7 sleeping aliens and 1 curious human who spent a single dollar. The first warning came quietly. A strange signal detected at the edge of the solar system, something massive, something hostile. Yuna's face went pale when she analyzed the data. "They found us," she whispered to Jay. The alien civilization that had destroyed her people was approaching Earth, not as explorers. As conquerors, military leaders gathered in a secure underground facility. Aliens and humans stood side by side, a sight that would have been impossible just months earlier. Colonel Park, who once viewed the aliens with deep suspicion, now looked at Yuna as a critical ally. "They are called the Void Collective," Sue explained, displaying holographic images of massive spacecraft. "They consume civilizations. They don't negotiate. They destroy." Min had already integrated human and alien defense systems. Quantum computers worked overtime, developing strategies faster than any human could comprehend. Satellites repositioned. Defense networks activated. The first attack came suddenly. Massive energy weapons struck Earth's outer orbital defenses, but something was different this time. The defenses held. Yuna's technology, combined with human creativity, had created something unexpected. a defense system that adapted in real time. Every attack was immediately analyzed, countered, transformed. Humans are unpredictable, Min said, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. The Void Collective cannot understand random human decision-making. Jay watched as global militaries, once divided, now worked as a single unit. Countries that had been enemies now shared technology, shared resources. The alien threat had done what decades of diplomacy could not. The battle moved closer to Earth. Massive spacecraft appeared, looking like dark nightmares against the blue planet. But human-alien hybrid ships met them, not with pure firepower, but with intelligent, adaptive strategies. Sue had developed weapons that could change molecular structures mid-flight, missiles that could think, defenses that could predict and counter attacks before they happened. "We are not just fighting," Yuna told the human commanders, "we are protecting a potential." 3 days of continuous battle followed. The sky became a complex dance of energy weapons, adaptive shields, and impossible maneuvers. Satellites captured images that looked more like abstract art than warfare. The Void Collective didn't understand humans. They understood structured systems, predictable responses. Humans were anything but predictable. A critical moment came when a young human pilot made a decision so crazy, so unexpected, that it completely disrupted the alien attackers' strategy. He flew directly into the heart of their largest ship, using an improvised method that no computer could have predicted. Min watched the footage and laughed. "Perfectly human," she said. The final battle happened near Jupiter's orbit. Human and alien ships fought together, their technologies merging into something entirely new. Not a human fleet, not an alien fleet, something different. Yuna realized they were creating more than a defense. They were creating a new civilization, the Void. Collective was defeated not by superior technology, but by something more complex, by adaptability, by unexpected cooperation. When the final ship was destroyed, silence filled the communication channels. Humans and aliens looked at each other. They had survived. Together. Jay stood in the control room, watching the aftermath. Colonel Park approached him, something like respect in his eyes. $1, the colonel said. $1 changed everything. Yuna smiled, a human smile she had learned. Perfectly imperfect. The world had changed. Humans had discovered they were not alone, and they were far more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. The unexpected alliance had been born, not from strength, not from technology, but from curiosity. From a single moment, from $1 spent in a small vintage shop, and everything was different now.